Chapter 14 Windy as Fuck. Leaving the Yucca Valley area, I honestly couldn't imagine too many more challenges lying ahead, although I had enough experience at this point to expect the worst. Maybe it wasn't the worst part of the trip, but I ended up walking through an area with challenges I couldn't have anticipated. Here I was, 90-something days into the walk, still experiencing unexpected obstacles. First up was cutting through a valley to get past the mountains. It wasn't quite as bad as that canyon road in Arizona, but the increase in traffic, thanks California, definitely added to the stress of the situation. I had enough road shoulder for my stroller to fit in, but there wasn't any wiggle room past that. Bushes covered in thorns would occasionally grow out over the shoulder, forcing me to either maneuver around them by entering the road lane or manually shoving them out of the way, cutting up my arms, hands, and legs. I had no choice but to do this during heavy traffic. Yelling whatever combination of swear words I could conjure up, I made my way through this dangerous 10-mile stretch. After some time, the road widened out, straightened up, and the shoulder got much bigger. It appeared to be smooth sailing from here on out. I wasn't too far from LA and the surrounding cities either, so I thought I'd soon be exclusively on sidewalks. This was not the case. Shortly after the road was straightened out, I came across a sign that stated, "Caution, high winds ahead." My exact reaction was, "High winds ahead? I'm from Kansas. I can handle that." It turns out I could not handle that. These were the most intense winds I had experienced on the entire journey. Even though the wind was blowing to my side as opposed to coming from head on, I was struggling to stay on my feet. In fact, at one point, my stroller almost got blown over as well. This was so frustrating. After all I had been through for months, and finally what felt like inches from the finish line, I was experiencing yet more unexpected hardships. I see it as a lesson in finishing strong. Things only got increasingly difficult on this day. I realized that I was working my way toward the interstate, which I avoided as much as possible. This left me with one other option: cutting through a small neighborhood and then taking a dirt road through a wind farm. I went with the latter, as I didn't think the legal risk of being on the interstate was worth it, especially with the time crunch I was on at this point. I had already purchased my plane ticket for the day that I had intended to finish. Talk about self-motivation. Unfortunately, turning into this little community meant walking straight into the wind. Suddenly, things became much more difficult. I was also concerned about upsetting the residents, as I was definitely out of place. Halfway through, I heard someone call out to me, "Do you need help with something?" I interpreted their tone as passive-aggressive, thinking they were going to call the cops on me or something. Thankfully, he was being genuine and assisted me with directions to get to the town of Whitewater, confirming that the dirt road I was heading toward would lead me there. Knowing the locals were cool with me eased a lot of the anxiety about being in that area. I was able to find the dirt road. The only problem with this dirt road was that it wasn't dirt. It was sand, and pretty deep sand. This road would be an incredibly grueling section. Violent wind gusts were now coming directly head-on. The tires of my heavy stroller dug into the sand. All I could do was hunch over and put all of what strength I had left into shoving my way up this hill. While it definitely took some time, and I pulled a muscle in my abdomen, I made it through that stretch and to the Pacific Crest Trail. I was honestly expecting something a little more established than what I came across, but it was a place to legally camp, all that I needed. I had been in contact with a former Pacific Crest thru hiker, Elise Ott, while I was walking, so it was fun to experience a tiny snippet of what she did, as well as be able to send some pictures of that section her way. I found a large tree away from the trail, tucked my stuff and myself behind as much foliage as I could, and set up camp. While the wind was still pretty intense, the foliage helped break it up a bit, and finally, I was able to relax. I was in an awful mood during this stretch of my journey. My body was tired, I was anxious about things waiting back home, and I was mentally exhausted from the continuous problem-solving nature of what I was doing. With only around 100 miles to go, I was questioning whether the walk was actually worthwhile. I've struggled throughout my life with finishing strong. I think I tend to start strong and slowly lose interest or motivation throughout whatever the project or task may be. The walk was a great way to show myself that I could break this cycle. Considering how much time and money I'd already invested into the journey, there was no way in hell I was going to quit at this point. So I kept trudging, even if I had to yell fuck several times a minute.